And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at an article that suggests that Brian Robinson Jr. is the best player that the Washington Commanders have available to trade. We're also going to be looking at two running back prospects that I'd certainly like the Washington Commanders to take if they are available on draft day. And so before we go ahead and jump into the content for today, first wanted to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to hit Terry McLaurin next season in stride for hopefully a lot of touchdowns. And so in exchange for that subscribe button, I'm going to continue to give you nothing but Washington Commanders content on a day-to-day basis. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the content for today. And so we are looking at an article that was on Pro Football Focus here, and it's looking at every NFL team's best trade asset. And so looking into this article, the best asset for the Washington Commanders was Brian Robinson Jr. And so you can see right here what this particular writer had to say. And by the way, it was Bradley Locker who wrote this on Pro Football Focus. And it says that the Commanders offseason has centered around upgrading pieces around Jaden Daniels. And it might seem paradoxical to trade Robinson, but there would be good reasons to do so. It says, according here, his rushing grade has declined in all three seasons, and his 34 missed tackles forced in 2024 tied for 27th out of 31 qualified rushers. And it's talking about Brian Robinson is under contract for one more year, and then talking about this upcoming draft class, as you can see. And so here's the thing with this. I'm not sure if Brian Robinson Jr. is necessarily going to be the Washington Commanders' best trade asset. I just feel like that when it comes down to it, and you look at his statistics, you have to ask yourself, okay, he's been good in the NFL, but he's yet to get over 1,000 yards. And so I would wonder, what teams would be interested in that, especially with this NFL draft coming up. And I mean, he's definitely shown the ability to be, the type of player that provides the type of power that you would want in your run game to move the chains and things like that. But it is correct in the sense that he's not necessarily the most elusive running back. And I think that this is where the Washington Commanders are at right now, because you do have to wonder, do you want to go and do you want to get, an every down back? Or are you looking to get maybe a back that is going to be a bit more of a specialist? Because, Brian Robinson Jr., he's gone from 797 yards in 2022 up to 799, which was his best year by a couple yards. But he also dealt with the injuries. His average did go up with the 4.3, and he did get more touchdowns this year as well. And he also had the longest run, I think, in his career since he's been in the NFL at 40. But to say that he's going to be the every down back for the Washington Commanders, I'm not sure of that. And I think that between him and Austin Eckler, they really complemented each other very well. And so I think that for the Washington Commanders, I don't think that he's necessarily somebody that moves the needle for really necessarily any other team in the NFL. And I think that if the Washington Commanders are looking to move him, they should just go ahead and just bring in another running back, I think, via the draft. I think you go ahead, you bring him in, and I think that, look, if the contract expires, then I think that you just go ahead and do that versus going out there and extending him, and then you just see what happens. And so, if the Washington Commanders do elect to just go ahead and see what happens here, I think that there's two players that the Washington Commanders could certainly focus on when it comes down to it. And two of these players are players that we've talked about before. And that first player is going to be a player that I believe we talked about this, and I believe the Washington Commanders had actually went to go meet him. And that's important because, when you're talking about, Dan Quinn and talking about the character and the standard that the Washington Commanders want, that was one of the things that Dan Quinn talked about. He was excited to go out and meet some players and find out a little bit more about them. And Woody Marks was one of those players that the Washington Commanders, I believe, went and interviewed at the Combine. And so I like Woody Marks a lot. I mean, here's a player that he's had over 1,000 yards between rushing and receiving. I think he's had him for both. Here's a guy that's had 214 receptions, and he had like a 45-game stretch of having a catch in a game. And he's just a dual threat. Like, he's a player that he can be a dual threat out of the backfield. He can catch the football, so he's going to really put a lot of pressure on linebackers and things like that in the middle of the field. And he's super elusive. I've talked about his just ability to kind of make the cuts. Those were things that just really jumped off the page. And you're looking at a guy that has only missed one game in 5 seasons. And so he's incredibly durable. That's kind of one of the issues that we had at running back this year. And he's only had one fumble in 608 carries. And so that is terrific ball security. Now, the question here is that it seems like he's more of a specialist right now. Now, I'm not saying he cannot be, an every down back for you, but at 5'10", 208 pounds, you wonder, is he a type of guy that you get him and you're saying, all right, he's going to be an every down back? Because it sounds like right now, he's a guy that's going to be a specialist. You could put him in there occasionally, definitely on your third downs, but you're going to kind of sprinkle him in some early down situations, and maybe he's not an every down type of back. And so that's something that the Washington Commanders are going to have to ask themselves. Now, another player that I like that maybe fits the bill of being an every down back, and just another direction where I think the Washington Commanders can go and really probably I think where they should go, and that is going to be Kaleb Johnson. Like, I like Kaleb Johnson a lot out of Iowa. I think that, he's shown that he can be an every down back. And I think that that's really what it comes down to, because when you look at Saquon Barkley and you look at what he was able to do for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think it was his ability to be an every down back. And Kaleb Johnson seems like he's an every down type of back, and he has the home run hitting ability. Like, he's a guy that he seems like if he gets out into the open field, man, he's gone. And I like the fact that, look, he's been a player that's rushed over 1,000 yards. But more importantly, this was on his NFL draft buzz profile. Look, he's averaged 5.8 yards a carry in the fourth quarter. And that really suggests to me that he's a player that maybe he gets stronger as the game goes along. And look, for a team that really kind of wore teams out, especially when we talked about the time of possession, like, this is what I'm talking about with the Washington Commanders. Like, if you're going to go get a running back, I think you need to go get a running back that can be an every down type of running back, and a running back that's really going to hammer onto a defense. Because you think about it, if he gets stronger as the game goes along, the tacklers are also going to get tired as the game goes along. So they're getting, they're not getting as much rest. And so you got a chance for him to really get through a tackle and then hopefully punch it into the end zone, which maybe is critical in a fourth down. And so that's what you want if a defense is starting to wear down and they're tired and fatigued and they're not tackling very well. And so that's why I like Kaleb Johnson. And then on the flip side of this, look, I don't mind if the Washington Commanders want to do a little bit more of a running back by committee. This is why I'm saying that you could definitely hold on to Brian Robinson Jr. and bring a guy in like Woody Marks. Like, that makes a lot of sense, because you have different ways in which you can attack a defense. You would have Jeremy McNichols, you have Chris Rodriguez Jr., you have Brian Robinson Jr., you have Austin Eckler. That kind of makes a bit more sense there. But I think if you're going for an every down back, then that's probably where you might be looking to move on from a Brian Robinson Jr. I'm just not sure if there's necessarily going to be the market there for him. And so anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think that, yes, Brian Robinson Jr. is the best player that the Washington Commanders have to trade? And then also, too, do you think they should? And then next, do you think the Washington Commanders should focus on an every down running back like a Kaleb Johnson, or do they need to go out and maybe get a specialist like a Woody Marks, somebody who you could maybe plug in, and maybe he's going to be playing some situational football and it's a little bit more of a committee type of backfield back here? So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And as we always say, go Commanders. I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.